I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Builder Talent Tuesday, recorded on February 13th, 2017. Builder Talent Tuesday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the builder profile talents, one talent at a time. Today is the kickoff to the series. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room. It's available for you right below the main video window. If you'd log in for us, there's a login button, bottom left-hand corner. Click on that, choose the guest account. Take the guest name out, put your own name in, and hit submit. You can join us there as well. You can also pop that chat out. There's two little red boxes in the upper right-hand corner. If you select that, it'll pop the chat out. Often the best way to do that during one of our webcasts. If you're listening to the recorded version and have questions, or you need custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can contact us via email, coaching@gallup.com, or use the contact form right there on the live page. Micah Libran is our host today. Mike is a workplace consultant with Gallup. And Micah, welcome to our very first Builder Talent Tuesday.
Thanks, Jim. I'm thrilled to be here. What a fantastic, I think, need there is in the world to talk about this tool and how it can really help accelerate the work that all of our coaches are doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And just so folks know, those coming over from Theme Thursday, we will structure this as we go through the season, this very first season, a lot like we structured the first season of Theme Thursday. So it's kind of to get the community in and thinking about the basics and thinking about each one of those talents. And so today we'll be talking about what is the builder profile and what we're doing with it. And we have one of our very best trainers and consultants around that as well. And so we'll work that through today. And then starting 2 weeks from now, we will start covering each of the 10 talents as we go forward, and they'll be available for you in their own subscribable podcast form if you want to get that downloaded to your phone and listen to that each week as well. So Micah, let's jump in and introduce our guest.
Great. So I'm thrilled to have a really great guest to help us kick us off the Builder Profile series here. In many cases, the hardest thing to understand about this is just the educational component. What is the tool? Where does it come from? And when it comes to helping people make educational breakthroughs, Rod Karr is absolutely my favorite person to count on for that. Rod is a workplace consultant with Gallup, which means he gets paid to help people understand and do something with that understanding. Beyond that, he really is my favorite person to co-lead with. Just a very thoughtful leader who's constantly engaging, and I think he's got a lot of teacher talent. So Rod, thank you so much for being here to lend your talent to us.
Micah, thank you for those kind words. A pleasure to be here and a pleasure to talk about Builder Profile.
Excellent. So Rod, could you tell us just a little bit, pretend like we know absolutely nothing, because the truth is right now I kind of am at that place. What is Builder Profile?
So Builder Profile is the result of an initiative to try to understand what it is that are the unique talents that people bring who have an entrepreneurial gift. And we went through several iterations of what we called it and have finally landed on this notion of a builder profile, because these are people who don't just start things, but they build and sustain things. These are people who, it's not just about innovation, it's about something that gets created that a customer will buy and for which a business can be built around. And so that's what this instrument was designed to discover. And in that discovery process, we found that there are 10 builder profile talents that we focus on when we deliver the course and that people have revealed to them when they take the assessment.
So this is the same thing as Entrepreneurial Strengths Finder, EP10, now morphed into what we're calling BP10. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
So when you think about, I like that connection. You mentioned not just entrepreneurship, but also innovation, not just being creative, but also something that people want to buy. Yeah. How is this tool best positioned? What's the best way to think about using it?
So this is an assessment that can identify the presence of those 10 talent themes in any individual. The great ones, the great highly successful starters and builders of businesses possess or account for all 10 of these talents. So it isn't, oh, I have a top 3 and I do the best I can with those. the great successful builders of businesses that we've studied possess all of these, or they account for all of them. And by that, I simply mean maybe I don't have the relationship talent, which is one of the 10 talent themes. Well, do I then have the capacity to gather around me someone who brings that, someone who brings connections to a broad network of people? Those can be people to help run the business and help it be successful, but those might also be people who bring connections to people who can finance my endeavor or my idea. So it's about having all of them or accounting for all of them.
So that makes it sound like it's distinctly different than CliftonStrengths.
Absolutely. CliftonStrengths is a developmental tool. It's a measure of you against yourself, in effect. This is a measurement of you against the best in this role of being an entrepreneur. So
Could
it is
you-
a selection tool.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. Could you take BP10 and just fail? Are there people who are not great builders?
Yes, there are. So we would not use the word that they fail, but they certainly do not possess with intensity many, maybe none of the top 10 of these 10 talent themes. And so, yes, I think in that sense, there are people who are not cut out to be entrepreneurs, just as there are people who are not cut out to be teachers, managers. Yeah, this is a selection tool that helps us identify those capabilities.
Rod, let me jump in real quick here. When we think of the term builder versus the term entrepreneur, we started with that idea. Besides it being really hard to spell, when we that's one of those things for me. I was like, oh, how do I spell that word? And we've moved to builder. Can you talk a little bit about why we did that, or the change in that area?
Yeah. So certainly the word itself, entrepreneur, has some baggage. I think there was a time in U.S. history where that baggage was these were cutthroat capitalists. And that's not what we're looking for, and that's not the intention behind this. So I think there were some interpretation issues with that word. That word also gets used in a lot of conversation and talk about what the economy needs to spur it forward. And so I think when we began to look at this, we began to discover that there was a little bit of a relationship between entrepreneur and just startups. And startups are not going to solve the great problems of the economy. We have to do more than start up something new. We have to sustain it. We have to build that over time if it's going to become the kind of organization or organizations that employ thousands, produce the new products and services of the next generation. So that's what we got excited about. What is that particular quality? And that is that ability to build.
Rod, and let me say, we've heard since we've made that change, I've heard from a lot of different cultures or countries where the term builder doesn't really resonate. And we were having trouble with the word entrepreneurialism here because of that narrow focus it was getting in the United States. Let me encourage our friends overseas, wherever you might be, as you're explaining this to your culture, as you're explaining it to your workplace, change that word if you need to, or use a different word, right? To help if it means something different, like I've heard from our friends in Germany, that builder means Bob the Builder in construction. Well, okay, we can't change it to match every culture. Find the word that works right for you. And as you're thinking about that and you're explaining it, use that word instead. I think we're okay with that. Rod, do you want to add, as we think about different cultures, you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think your admonition is on target there, Jim. Yeah, we know that these same 10 talents would apply if we were calling this entrepreneurship. And so, yes, it's certainly okay to use that term.
Great. Hey, Rod, so along those same lines, what position do you think this serves within organizations? What's the best way you see coaches using this? Is it to think about, should I leave and go start a new business, or how could I use the Builder Profile 10 and still benefit the organization I'm already a part of?
Yeah, so I think there certainly are some intrapreneurial applications of this. Within organizations, we certainly see people who bring many of these talents, and they might direct them and be encouraged to direct them through coaching in a particular direction or after a particular project. So I think it has that potential. In addition, I think this has a place for identifying people who might be those individuals who see that new possibility, who have the capacity to disrupt what's going on in their organization or within their industry, to bring a capacity heretofore unrealized. So I think that's the application that's most apparent.
Fantastic. We're going to dive into all 10 throughout this series and really help people fall in love with them and understand what they look like in real human beings. But could you talk about maybe 2 or 3 of the themes that really intrigue you? Help us understand a little bit of some examples of what these 10 look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of them really jump out at me. I've been able to lead maybe a dozen, 14 of these courses many times with university groups, sometimes public courses, and a couple of the themes that jump out with that intrigue me for their depth and maybe for their potential misinterpretation just from the name of the theme itself. One of those is one I just referred to, disruptor. The people who have this talent, disruption is the outcome of what they do, not the intention or the goal going in. They see a product, a service, an opportunity, and they go after it. And in doing so, they disrupt the industry in terms of how it currently exists. But they don't go in with the notion of, I'm going to disrupt. In fact, that sounds rather destructive. What they go in with is this energy and enthusiasm about this new approach, this new idea. And because they have that energy behind it, that determination, another one of the 10 builder profile talents, they are able to end up disrupting the environment and bring us something new, something different. So I find that one really interesting. And then the other one that the word itself is almost provocative, and that is the talent theme of risk. And you think about that on the surface. In fact, we changed this one. It was originally called risk taker. And that could sound a little bit like somebody who wants to go jump out of an airplane. What is interesting about people, these entrepreneurs, these builders who have this talent for risk, is that by the time they take action, it's not a risk to them. To them, they have thought through all the consequences. They've weighed it and measured it and thought about all the consequences and implications. And so when they act, they don't feel it's a risk. And thus they go forward with great confidence in their idea. Confidence, another one of those talent themes, which allows them to go forward and act without being hasty or feeling like I'm just doing something, I'm throwing something out there and seeing if it sticks to the wall. They're quite certain it will stick to the wall.
So when you're using this profile, bringing it back to people who are familiar with CliftonStrengths, we think about name what you have, claim it, and really use it intentionally toward a goal. How would you coach someone around Builder Profile 10?
So I think it's if you take the example of a couple of the themes I've just mentioned, getting that individual to talk about how they assess risk, how they go about doing things that they've not done previously, and how did they determine that that was the right thing to do. Get them to give character and definition to how they do that task, that talent of taking risk. I think from that they begin to discover things about, when I decided to do something in 8th grade, I didn't think it was a risk. I just thought it was the right thing to do because it worked. I'd thought about it and how it would make people feel. So I think that's the opportunity to get them to talk about how this actually happens in them bears a great deal of fruit for the person coaching them.
Something you said just at the very beginning, I think really stuck with me, and that's that all great builders or entrepreneurs have or account for these 10. So it seems like you've got a great structure, a scaffolding that you can help people fit into and almost
Yeah.
aim toward.
Yes, and I think that's so. What we would do, let's say I have 6 of these 10 themes at a very high level, a pretty good level of intensity, but 4 of them I don't have. Well, I think clearly the coaching has to fall into 2 channels then, if you would. One is, how do I keep doing those things I do really well? And keep mastering those and taking advantage of those 6 talents that I possess. Then those 4 talents that I don't possess, what support do I need? What assistance do I need? What guidance? Are there things I can study? For example, one of the talent themes is knowledge. And when we use knowledge in the Builder Profile 10, it isn't just intelligence. It's not like learner and that capacity for learning that comes out of learner in the CliftonStrengths Finder. Rather, knowledge is about specifically the industry that they're in. Do they see and understand that industry broadly? Well, if I have great talents in 6 areas, but not in knowledge, well, there's some coaching I could get. There's some things I could read. There are courses I might take that could build my knowledge. There are experts I could gather around me who bring knowledge, complementary partners, in other words. So I think that gives them something with which they must, in this case, work on. I think when we look at CliftonStrengths, we know that there are probably some talents, if you don't possess them, you live just fine without them. You go on, you have success, you find what works for you. The entrepreneurial talents or builder profile talents must be possessed by everyone. You must possess all of them or account for all of them. So I have to find a way to get there.
Rod, we kind of alluded to the reports that come out with this, and there's 2 separate reports. We've talked about intensities without really explaining them. So can you take a second? I don't want to lose your headset real quick. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. Can we take a second and can you walk through, so the very first report without intensities and the second one with?
Yes, so the first report simply lists in order of dominance your 10 builder profile talents with no nomenclature, no intensity report with it. The second report that is available to coaches is an intensity report that gives them some numbers to understand the depth of that talent and the extent of that talent. A highly useful tool for a coach. We've had ongoing conversations about, do we share that with the client, the person themselves, and that's going to have to be a judgment that's made by the coach with each of those people that they're coaching.
And we have said that for various reasons, we've moved that to coaches only, a separate report. And today, a little bit manual. So if you are interested in figuring out how to do that process, you can send me an email. Most of our coaches know this already, but you can send me an email, jim_collison@gallup.com, and I'll help you get that as well. Rod, I'll also say today, as of the recording, so today is February 13th, 2017, BP10 is still a part of our Gallup Strength Center. And so if folks go to gallupstrengthcenter.com, that first report that Rod is referring to, available for $12, can be taken right there. But we are working in the next year to separate that out and actually give it its own website. And so if you're listening to this in a time-shifted manner, it might be 2018 or 2019. Just know we might have moved it by now. So you might have to do a little Googling to find it. So those are the details. Micah, back to you.
Awesome. We've talked a little bit about the differences between this and CliftonStrengths. How, if you're a great coach, how do you use both of them?
So I think CliftonStrengths is knowing who I am and considering who I am, how I use those to my best advantage in all walks of my life. The Builder Profile 10 is much more specific to the role of being a builder of a business and sustaining that business. And so it's understanding the uniqueness of the talents I have in that regard. So, for example, I might have Clifton strengths that suggest in my top 5 or top 10, I have 3 or 4 what we call relationship building talents. I may take Builder Profile 10 assessment and discover that relationship is one of those that ranks at the bottom or near the bottom in terms of the 10 talent themes that I bring to bear in the role of relationship building as a builder of an enterprise. And so they don't necessarily translate because I have several relationship building talents. It's going to mean relationship as a talent for the specific role of building a business are going to equate to that.
So maybe some of your Clifton strengths are going to help you answer the how question of accommodating for those that you don't have,
yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so the Clifton strengths might help me build some connections that help me satisfy that relationship talent that I don't possess high on my BP10, because it helps connect me with people who maybe have expertise in finance that I don't have, or people who have the ability to delegate well in an organization, and I don't possess that.
That's great.
Mike, I'd say a great example too is for me in the sense when we think about internal entrepreneurialism, right, or intrapreneurialism as we've called it, and that's even harder to spell. So for me, my top 3 in the BP10: determination, selling, and knowledge. And here at Gallup, we had no webcast infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
And I'm inside an organization, and yet I've built this infrastructure. And those, if you read the definitions for those themes, and then that it kind of matches up, right? I wouldn't take no for an answer. We're gonna do this thing, and that sheer determination of staying on task and getting it done. And then of course, my job is to sell our products out through our webcast. This is what we're doing, by the way, no secret, I think, right? At this point, that we're trying to influence, right? We're trying to do that. Now the woo and the communication that I have on the CliftonStrengths side, right? That's what helps me do some of these things. So I want to influence, I want to communicate. It makes sense when we tie those two together. So I think my role and what I'm doing here is a perfect example of thinking of it, not just, Rod, like you said, not just starting up a company, right? But starting up an initiative, starting a new channel, starting a new process, starting a new fill in the blank, right? From that standpoint of a need inside an organization or outside an organization to have something that we can sell.
Yeah, and what's interesting about these builder profile talents is on the surface they could get confused until you dig a bit deeper. And so one that comes to mind is a gentleman I spoke with who did not have relationship building talent particularly high, but when he told his story about when he was 10 years old organizing a lawn mowing business. And for him, organizing the lawn mowing business he assessed that there wasn't anything like it in his neighborhood. So there was an opportunity. And then he went and printed up some flyers. And he took those flyers and he didn't just stick them in people's doors or mailboxes. He went up to the door and he knocked on the door and got an answer, got an engagement with those people. On the surface, that looks like relationship building, but he didn't have that particularly high. What he had high was confidence. He had confidence that what he was offering had value. He had no trouble as a 10, then 11-year-old knocking on doors and introducing himself and what he had for people. So I think the differentiation between relationship building and something that can drive you to do an action that sounds like relationship building, but it was really building the business, not building a relationship.
Mm. That's a great distinction, and probably one that I can imagine if that was me and you're coaching me, that gives me something I can hang my hat on and do more of.
Yeah.
As you've been coaching coaches, Rod, around how to use this, how to understand it, what are some of the main ahas that people have in your classroom around this assessment?
So I think the biggest takeaway is that these BP10 talents are specific to the role. And I think for many people who come from a CliftonStrengths coaching perspective have gotten so imbued with this notion of these are developmental, and that it's It's about who I am and how I can use these in whatever role I'm in. These are specific to the role of building a business, and how do I master then utilizing these in building that business? How do I go in depth into these 10 and understand how to better gain leverage, possibilities? How do I better find complementary partners if I need them? Because that may help me account for that where I'm not quite as strong.
Wonderful. Can you talk a little bit about what maybe Gallup's goal with this is? What's the desire behind it, or what problem do we hope to solve?
Yeah, I think it's very unabashed and with no shame. We want to create jobs, and the people who help us create jobs are people who build businesses that offer sustainable growth over time, and we're not creating as many of those. In fact, one of the pieces of information we use in the course that we deliver around this is that in the last 2 or 3 years, we've realized a net negative in terms of number of businesses being created in the United States. So if there are fewer businesses being created, then the jobs that would go with those businesses, it stands to reason, also aren't coming about. And so I think we're seeing this as an opportunity to identify talent, get it channeled for entrepreneurs, builders of businesses in a way that can produce those kinds of economic benefits. And I think what gets us inspired is the potential. If you are really good in music, Juilliard will find you. If you are really good in athletics, somebody will find you. If you are really good academically, you have SATs or ACTs that off the charts, somebody will find you. If you have builder profile talent, I don't know if anybody will find you. We want to make that possible for people to know this about themselves, to make this more visible to them so that they might make themselves more visible in our marketplace, so that they will be found, and we get to channeling that talent in the best ways we can. And some of these talent themes emerge very early in people. How do we begin to capitalize on that and get them in the right places? How do we get them to Juilliard or the Southeast Conference to play football, or whatever that place might be? How do we get that happening for these builders of businesses?
Rod, one of the things I admire about working with you is your teaching talent. It translates easily across cultures. Understanding that there's quite a bit of American or North American research behind this. How do you see BP10 translating worldwide?
So we think it's culturally neutral. We have a lot of the base work was done in Mexico in building this assessment and in studying high school through 20-year-olds roughly in Mexico, where we validated the instrument. So we think it's much like StrengthsFinder, that it's culturally neutral. Now, will we continue to make discoveries? We hope so. We keep studying it, examining it, and I think our willingness to keep looking at the name itself and saying, how do we get that right? The fact that we've looked at talent themes and renamed some of them because we felt that the name we had for risk taker, for example, was subject to being misinterpreted or sounding almost cavalier, when indeed it's, when understood as somebody who's deeply thought through something to the point they don't think it's a risk that they're taking, really it sounds very different than risk taker. And I think our willingness to be open and willing to change to get this right speaks to our willingness to keep looking at any of those cultural issues that may emerge.
Rod, have you taught this outside of the United States? So you're one of our primary instructors. Has it been mostly here or outside of the United States as well?
Only to North American audiences.
Okay, and if individuals wanted to take a course, of course they could go to courses.gallup.com and it would be there. Who is that course really designed for? I mean, in what you've seen coming to the course, who takes advantage of it the best?
Yeah, so this course is ideally designed for people who are going to coach uh, builders of businesses. Whether those builders of businesses are in their 50s or whether they are 21-year-olds in their end of their college experience and thinking about businesses they might like to run, opportunities they see. So I think it's ideally designed for people who will coach people who possess these 10 talent themes.
Great. Rod, what have we missed? Anything else we should add so that we really understand and get the most out of this?
I think the greatest learning one can have with the BP10 is spending time with people who possess these talents at a high level. So they don't have to possess all of them, but if you can find someone who has determination and spend time and talk with them about what does that mean in you? How does that surface in you? How does that manifest itself in you? I think coaches will generate from those conversations rich, deep understanding and stories about how those themes operate in people. Um, People who begin businesses, often in those early throes of that enterprise, put in enormous hours. And if you don't have something like determination, I don't know where you find the 24-hour days that some of these entrepreneurs and builders put in as they're initiating and getting that business up and helping it get its legs. Listen to people who bring the talent theme of confidence, and not just listen to the stories they tell. Listen to the tone of their voice. When they speak with certainty about what they're doing and where it's going. I think that experience is both the joy and the revelation as you as a strengths coach begin to get deep understanding of each of the themes, and from that are able to ask people provocative questions, revealing questions, probing questions that help them see even more about these talents in themselves.
It is such an accelerant, I think, to the job that we do as strengths coaches. If you think about the urgency and the seriousness with which we've got to figure out ways to accelerate our economy, we've got to find those people and hear them. I think it just sets us in such a privileged place of curiosity because it helps us think about what we should be listening for, what we should be curious about.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that you can help us understand this tool a little bit better because it's certainly something we need to be using.
And I am a great advocate of take both assessments. I think having both provides a richness that allows you to know who you are from a developmental perspective, strengths, the Clifton strengths, but also then the specific selection tool of entrepreneurial or builder profile talents, to know to what degree do you possess those, and are there some things there that reveals for you? And I think from that understanding, they kind of mutually feed one another in very beneficial ways. So I would encourage people, no, you don't have to take one or the other. I think having both of those assessments can be a powerful tool for anyone beginning and launching a business enterprise.
Rod, as we were launching this, I was getting a lot of questions about mapping. It makes sense. We have a lot of people who have taken CliftonStrengths before. They take this and then they immediately want to make a connection with, hey, what does this mean that, and how does that work? How are we handling that, or what are we saying about trying to come up with a mapping at this point?
So in the training we do talk about what BP10 is and isn't, and what Clifton Strengths Finder is and isn't, to try to keep those clearly delineated. Both have value, but caution needs to be exercised in not jumping to conclusions. Someone might assume, oh, you can look at Clifton Strengths and say, if you've got self-assurance, you probably have independence and confidence in the BP10. Well, maybe not. And it bears it's what it's worthy of is an investigation of both of those assessments and to determine how are they uniquely different.
Yeah, the value's in the conversation. We say this all the time on the Clifton Strengths side, which is don't label for label's sake, you know, but allow those labels to really richly draw out in you a conversation that may take months or years to fully realize itself. And so we want to avoid, like Micah, like you and I do on Theme Thursday, we want to encourage people to let this be a journey, a process of discovery, a question invoking conversation with you and your coach or whoever to move these things forward. And so be careful not to label those as well. Micah, I've got some things to wrap this up with, but let me throw it back to you just as we kind of bring this in for a landing.
Thanks. I want to again thank Rod for helping us dispel any myths. Probably the most powerful conversation we can have for the audience of Clifton Strengths coaches is, what is BP10? What is it not? Actually, let's call it the second most. I think the most exciting conversation we can have is, how valuable is this? I mean, I just imagine it being the ability for us coaches to have our finger on the pulse of what we need to be paying attention to. It's how do you study and support and excite the people who are going to light the world on fire in the best way possible. Rod, thanks for the education, the context around this, and for your passion about this tool and the best way that we can use it.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to do this.
Rod, certainly we'll be checking in with you from time to time as we do the season. Micah, our goal as we think about 2017 is to get all 10 of these talents done by the summit, because we're offering 2 courses around the summit. So I mentioned, if you're interested in doing this, go out to courses.gallup.com and you want to look for, it will say Coaching Builder Talents at the Clifton Strengths Summit. Those courses are actually 15% off until the summit comes. So you might want to consider that if you were thinking about taking that course and you want to get more information there. Head out to our courses site. There's ways to send emails in, and you can talk with someone if you'd like to about this. We'd love to talk to you about it. Don't take our word for it. We have plenty of, if you go out to the Gallup Strengths Center, we've got in the BP10 section, we've got some video interviews with some folks who've gone through this, and so you can get more information on that as well. Also, don't forget that we'll be making these throughout the summer. And so I think, Rod, our goal is to get all 10 done, and then we'll look at the styles, right? Because we didn't even talk about this. There's a style component. Can you give a little teaser on that? How are we using the styles?
Well, it's an approach that says, when I look at the composite of my BP10, does it give me some broad indication of how I get things done as a builder of a business? So much like the domains in Clifton Strengths, this gives us a broad perspective of maybe where I'm strongest, where I may need a little more support, and that's the intention behind that.
No, good. And we are looking, Mike and I will probably cover those in the fall. So you'll get all 10 before the summit. We'll look at the styles afterwards, and we'll bring on some coaches at some point to kind of talk through this. So Rod, I'll say thanks from my end. Appreciate you doing this as well. Remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments in an email. If you want to do that, it's just coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program, as well as all the past ones. We got links to a ton of them, including Todd and I have done several BP10 updates. And so if you haven't caught up on those, go to YouTube and search Gallup Strengths Center, and you'll see a playlist there. Or you can just Google BP10 and Called to Coach, and those will show up as well. All those resources are available on our coaching blog as well, coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested, like I mentioned, in taking the course for the BP10, you can get a complete list of them. Again, that's courses.gallup.com. And if you found this helpful, we'd ask that you share it. Micah and I will say we are looking forward to working through these 10 ourselves with coaches as we have them on over the next 10 weeks or so as we lead up to the summit. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.